Bonjour à toutes et à tous. On June 4th, the Prime Minister and I launched AI for All, Canada's national AI strategy. Le 4 juin, le Premier ministre et moi avons lancé l'IA pour tous. The strategy is built on three principles: trust, opportunity, and sovereign control. And today, we want to talk about trust. Aujourd'hui, c'est à propos de la confiance. Canadians deserve to know that the rules are clear, that their rights are protected, and companies are accountable for how personal information is collected, used, and shared. We made a promise to you. We will protect your children, we will protect your personal information, and we will protect your privacy. Nous avons fait une promesse aux Canadiens. Nous allons protéger vos enfants, nous allons protéger votre vie privée, et nous allons protéger vos renseignements personnels. That's why today, our government tabled the Protecting Privacy and Consumer Data Act. The new bill gives Canadians more control over their personal information, gives them the right to deletion against deepfakes. It protects children's information as sensitive. It takes aim at surveillance pricing to stop price gouging. So why do we need this now? Canada's consumer privacy laws are 25 years old. They were written before the iPhone. It was a different time, before AI, before deepfakes. And because so much of our lives right now, especially our kids' lives, have been shaped by platforms, apps, and digital services, we're living in a different world. And our laws need to catch up. Les Canadiens vivent dans un monde numérique qui a beaucoup changé. Nos lois doivent aussi changer. This bill does 5 important things. First, it protects children's information. The bill requires companies to treat children's personal information as sensitive. That means stronger protection when companies collect, use, or share information about children. Parents expect that, Canadians expect it, and children deserve it. Les enfants méritent une protection plus forte dans le monde numérique. This is also a powerful addition to the Safe Social Media Act that we tabled last week with our colleague Mark Miller. One bill is about safer digital spaces for children. This one is about stronger protection for personal information. Together, they send a strong message. Companies that operate in Canada must take responsibility for the risks their services create, especially when children are involved. Second, this bill creates a right to deletion. Using that new right, Canadians will have a practical way to fight back against harmful deepfakes. They will have more power to require companies to delete personal information they should no longer hold. And they'll have more control over the digital trail that companies build about them. Quand vos renseignements personnels sont utilisés contre vous, vous devez avoir des moyens de vous défendre. Third, this bill takes aim at inappropriate surveillance pricing. Companies should not have the ability to use your behavior, your location, your profile, your vulnerabilities, or your personal information to charge unfair prices. Your personal information should not be used against you for price gouging. Vos données ne devraient pas être utilisées contre vous. Fourth, this bill makes automated decisions more transparent. This is key. When computers, when algorithms help shape major decisions about prices, about services, about jobs, about insurance or a mortgage you're applying for, Canadians should not be left in the dark. They should know what information and criteria are being used. They should understand the main reasons behind the decision and have a way to challenge it. Les décisions importantes ne devraient pas se prendre dans une boîte noire. Fifth, this bill will strengthen data mobility. Canadians should be able to move their information more easily and have ways to benefit them. That gives people more control, and it gives them more choice, and if they can find better services, better options, and better prices. Une économie numérique moderne doit donner plus de contrôle aux gens, pas moins. But stronger protections only matter if there's real consequences when companies break the rule. That's why this bill gives the regulator real power to enforce the law. Many have called for this. For too long, companies that misuse Canadians' personal information have not faced strong enough consequences. This bill changes that. The regulator will have the power to investigate. The regulator will have the power to impose penalties and the power to hold companies accountable when they misuse Canadians' personal information. This is not a voluntary code. These are real rules with real consequences. Ce n'est pas seulement des principes. Ce sont des règles claires avec vraies conséquences. Responsible businesses deserve clear rules of the road. They deserve to know what is expected of them. They deserve a framework that supports responsible innovation while making sure that bad actors are held accountable. So let me be clear here. Protection is not the opposite of innovation. Protection is what makes responsible innovation possible. Protéger les Canadiens et encourager l'innovation responsable. Les deux vont ensemble. That is why this bill is so key to AI for all. The trust. AI must serve Canadians, not the other way around. L'IA doit servir les Canadiens et non l'inverse. That starts with trust, protecting children, protecting privacy, protecting personal information, and making powerful technologies accountable to Canadian rules. That's how Canada will lead. That's how Canada will develop trust and Canadian opportunity and Canadian control. That is the objective of AI for All. Thank you. Love to take your questions.
Can you explain, Minister, just on surveillance pricing? Those words aren't mentioned anywhere in the bill. There's just a section on appropriate purposes. Yeah. Why not just put into words that surveillance pricing and define it should be banned?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the new bill is a principle-based bill that makes sure that the regulator can draft rules around surveillance pricing to stop the improper use of information. If the harms outweigh the benefits, as in the case of surveillance pricing, the regulator can take charge. And it's very important. On the other hand, Canadians use reward points. So there's lots of uses of where individuals collect reward points, and we want to make sure that we're not taking reward points away from citizens that are using reward points to get lower prices on food or lower prices on goods. But when this law passes, I will be asking the regulator for guidance, to publish guidance as one of my first acts on surveillance pricing, to clarify exactly what that will be.
But how does the regulator... How does this bill protect Canadians' information from international laws, specifically acts in the U.S.?
So, great question. No law here can undermine the legal regime in another country. We can't override another country's legal regime. Our primary purpose here is to give control back to Canadians over their own personal information and to require by law, with enforcement, that companies treat the information very sensitively. In real cases, in surveillance pricing cases to avoid price gouging, in cases of deepfakes to give people the right to deletion, for children to make sure that the chain of custody of children's information or any information is protected. So we can have a more enforceable regime under Canadian law to make that stronger.
This regulator we heard last week is going to take 18 months to get it up and running. Are you going to be waiting 18 months to receive this guidance?
So it's a great question. This bill, I hope, will get royal assent and we'll have a good debate about it. Once it has royal assent, the existing privacy laws, called PIPEDA, will still be in force. So Canadians have been protected for 25 years, and those laws will be still in function and in force. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner will still have those powers. And as the regulator is getting set up over as expeditiously as possible, we have the option to give provisions of this act towards that regulator, either in piecemeal or when the regulator is finally set up to take over all the provisions of that. So that's how it will work when the law, once it gets royal assent, and if there's a gap between royal assent and setting up the regulator.
Can you clarify what the role of the Privacy Commissioner is going to be moving forward, and also how you landed on the penalties of 3% of global revenues when the previous version of this bill was 5%?
Yeah. Great questions. First, let me just thank the Privacy Commissioner, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. They've done great work. We saw superb work. Last week, as well. And as you heard last week, the Privacy Commissioner had said we need a regulator that has real enforcement with the power to enforce, the power to investigate, the power to have penalties, and that's what we've given an independent regulator here to do just that. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner remains the place where the Privacy Act is enforced. The Privacy Act covers all information that the government handles, and that is still and remains the purview of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. How does government use information? That's under the Treasury Board, that's the Privacy Act. The new regulator the new commission will have the protecting privacy and consumer data, safe social media, and will have the enforcement powers that have long been called for. And in terms of the penalties, we have put these penalties that we think are, first of all, the toughest penalties we've ever had in Canada. These are, we have never had this kind of level of enforcement, and you're talking about penalties from 10 million to 3% of global revenue. So we think these are very significant penalties, especially in light of the fact that we've never had these kind of penalties in Canada before.
A lot of Canadians are worried about digital IDs. How will your government enforce digital IDs, or are you looking to regulate digital IDs at all?
The good thing about this piece of legislation is any form of collection of Canadians' personal data will have to adhere to very robust new standards, right? So whether you're collecting, for whatever purpose an organization is collecting, they will have a very high threshold, whether it's privacy frameworks, and they will have to inform the regulator exactly what they are doing, and the regulator will have the power to enforce, to make sure that the harms don't outweigh the benefits. This is the same for the question in surveillance pricing. This is the measure that the regulator looks like. If the information is being used, do the harms outweigh the benefits, in which case the regulator can step in.
Why is so much being left up to a regulator that's nowhere close to even being created yet?
It's really important that we have long called for, there has been lots of calls, including, by the way, from the OPC just last week, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, for a regulator that has accountability and enforcement ability. This is something that many people who have stood here before me have been asked, how come there's not a regulator that has the ability to enforce and have penalties and keep Canadians safe, draw clear guidelines for business, and we are setting that up. I think now with the Safe Social Media Act, with the Protecting Privacy and Consumer Data Act, and just the world that we're in now, we believe that it's very important to set up a robust commission that has those enforcement powers, and that's what we're doing in as quick a manner as possible. We think Canada needs that kind of independent regulator.
I'd like to ask about children. You say that there'll be a higher threshold for protecting children's data.
Yeah.
Is this a ban on tech companies, including AI companies, scraping kids' data when they say, look at an AI chatbot? Or what kind of protections are you suggesting here?
So all companies, again, we're not singling out, any company that is collecting information about children will have a high threshold to standards that they have to protect that information, as if it's, for example, children's information would be similar to how you treat biometric information. So they have a high standard to protect it, to keep it private, when they can dispose of it, how they can share it, So those standards for children's information will be a stronger threshold. And the regulator is going to make determinations, of course, within each context of how some information for legitimate business interests, but children's information will have a stronger threshold.
Is there a difference when it comes to consent?
Because there were two previous attempts by the Liberal government to update PIPEDA, and both died on the order paper after the government didn't really move to get them through Parliament quickly. So is anything going to be different this time?
Well, I'm not going to comment on what happened before for the new government. I think a couple things. I think the moment is here. I think Canadians expect that their information should be protected. I think it's pretty common sense. Do people want the right to fight back against a deep fake and the right to take things down? I think the average Canadian would say, yeah. Do you think that they want their children's information, when they're collected by a business, to be treated with a higher threshold? I think they would say yes. I think when they're applying for a mortgage or getting a loan and there's an algorithm determining, do you get it or not, they want some transparency to see what's inside the black box. I think they want to know those kind of things. I think they want to know if they feel that they're getting price gouged because there's a targeting of their personal information. I think they want to know that they've got someone in their corner that says, no, you can't do that. I think Canadians want this, they expect this, and I think there's widespread support for this. I'm a parent, we're all consumers. I think it's a common sense approach to what Canadians and what average folks want from their digital media. They want some control over their personal information because personal information is really important.
What about
We have time for one more question.
Is the U.S. action on Mythos impeding Canada's ability to review the model under Project Glasswing? And is that something that you're concerned about?
I can say we are always concerned about safety. It's our number one priority. We are in close touch with my counterparts in the United States about Mythos, which is the model that they have pulled back. And we, as you know, we are part of Project Glasswing, so we have access to that. The Canadian Cybersecurity Centre is also very in close touch with security services in the United States. So absolutely, we are seized with this. We are working very closely with our U.S. counterparts on that. And I can assure you that not only myself, but the Cybersecurity Centre are in touch with our critical infrastructure, our banks, to make sure that we keep Canadians' services safe from any potential vulnerability from those kind of algorithms, those kind of models.
Any changes to consent in this bill?
I have to go to Indu committee, and so I don't want to get the committee members. They want to ask about the AI strategy, which you are also welcome to ask about. But I just want to thank you. I'm happy to have more conversations about this. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And there's a